Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inclusive Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Ashwini Prasad, and today we are speaking with Kalki Subramaniam, who is a transgender rights activist, artist, actress, writer, inspirational speaker, and entrepreneur. She is absolutely amazing. She opened the first school for transgender students in India, and her newest book, We Are Not the Others, launched on June 30th in 2021. So thanks again so much for being here. Please leave a review, download, or share these episodes if you're enjoying them. In addition, I'm an anti-oppression, anti-racism educator and consultant, and if I can support you or your organizations to create safe spaces in your social justice work, feel free to connect. Let's see if we can create some safe spaces together. Feel free to connect with me at theinclusivescreenwriter.com or on Instagram at theinclusivescreenwriter. Let's take a listen to Kalki. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Inclusive Storytelling Podcast. I'm your host, Ashwini Prasad, and today I have the wonderful Kalki. Kalki, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Ashwini, for inviting me. I'm so glad and happy to be interviewed by you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure. So, Kalki, I do this with all my guests. Go ahead and introduce yourself. We want to hear and know more about who you are, and those that are able to see the video. We have an awesome background that Kalki has, but tell our audio folks as well what is behind you and who you are, and then we'll jump into this conversation.
Behind me is the transgender flag that is used by the transgender community all across the world. It basically represents equality. It basically represents inclusiveness and the male and female, as well as the transition. It has so many beautiful meanings. That's my background. Talking about me, my name is Kalki Subramaniam. I was born in a very small but very beautiful town in India, in the southernmost state, Tamil Nadu, in a beautiful small town called Pollachi. So I grew up here, I was born here, grew up here, and I did my education as well in this city, in this state. I've done 2 master's degrees, one in journalism and mass communication, and other one in international relations. For the past 15 years, I've been running an organization called Sahodari Foundation, which works for the social, political, and economic empowerment of the transgender people of India. Besides that, I'm a painter, I'm a poet, I'm an actor and performance artist, and I'm a transgender woman.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you were noting to me before we started recording that you have been in movies in the Tamil Nadu scene. So that's amazing.
Yeah, I've done quite a few movies, and acting is not really my cup of tea, but I believe I do have a great talent in acting. When there is a good opportunity, I always pick it up and do it. It's more of I want to make films rather than act in films.
Oh, yeah. You get to the point where you want to do that, right? You've done enough and you're like, okay, what's behind the scenes? I love it. I love it. Well, let's talk more about your organization. How did it start and what it is about and where do you see it going?
Sahodari Foundation was actually started in 2007. But even before that, we have been doing a lot of work. I and my friends, we've been doing a lot of work. So basically, I started the foundation in 2007. And since then, we have been doing a lot of work, especially working both ways, working with the public as well as working with the transgender community. Working with the public, insensitizing the public, the media, the government officials, policymakers, creating favorable policy, especially working with the judiciary, lobbying with them, advocating for equality and justice, and especially in framing laws and acts for favorable for our community, which particularly protecting against violence and discrimination and all that. Besides that, I, as an activist, I have been working with so many academic institutions. For past 10, 15 years, I have sensitized more than 1 million students in India. I've seen one generation to the other changing, and I've seen great results as well. What is 15 years ago for trans people is not today. Today, there's a lot of tolerance in the country. So on that positive note, I think I'm very proud of what I've done through our foundation. as
No,
an
that's
activist.
it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. So you use the word tolerance, and I kind of picked up on that. Do you think it's
Yeah.
tolerance or do you think it's acceptance of transgender folks?
It is first comes the tolerance, and definitely followed by that should be the acceptance. That is what I mean when I say tolerance, you know.
Mhm.
You acknowledge the space of someone, and that is the tolerance, and then you accept them totally unconditionally, and that is what is acceptance and inclusivity and human love.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. Human love. So, help me understand kind of growing up, did you feel like there was this tolerance, acceptance of the transgender community in India, or has it been something that you're saying that has gotten better, especially in the last 15 years?
You see, there is India is has always been an inclusive country, but after the arrival of the British and their colonial rule and the Victorian morality and all that, a lot has changed, especially the law, particularly Section 377 of the Indian Penal Code that actually criminalized same-sex relationship. And in 1872, or I should say 1875, I think so, the Criminal Tribes Act, which was imposed, which actually listed the transgender community as well as a criminal tribes, a born criminal. Because of these acts by the British, these laws that were imposed by the British, even 2 centuries ago, these were some of the reasons for the downfall of the transgender Hijra
Oh,
community in India. And till today, it has a huge impact on our lives. What was done 200 years ago has a huge impact on our lives. But before that, I would say we did have our own space in our ancient India. If you look at Mahabharata and Ramayana, definitely we have evidences on that. Even Arjuna, when being cursed uh, to be a transgender, he wasn't begging, he wasn't doing sex work. He was working as a martial arts teacher and a dance teacher to a princess in a
yeah.
palace. So, in that way, I think India is changing and we are changing India.
Oh, wonderful. And I love that you brought up the religious texts, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, because when I listen and I hear about all the stories, I'm like, gosh, there's a lot of intersex people, stories about them, and there's definitely transgender. And so I have this like cognitive dissonance between our histories and our ancient traditions and what's happening right now in the laws, as you mentioned. It just makes zero sense. Because my understanding is that within at least the religious text and what was been taught, there was a lot of acceptance of many types of people, not just this binary of man, woman, or male, female.
Yeah, that I totally agree. Yes, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So, I could go into, we could talk, probably spend hours on a workshop just talking about British colonization and the impact on India and laws. But today, on a positive note, where are some of the places where that you have gone? Is it just India, or are you teaching and educating around the world?
I think I've been around the world in many countries. I've been to Germany, I've been to Austria, I've been to Switzerland, I've been to Netherlands and Canada and Cambodia and the US. So, and Nepal as well. I've been to Berlin to talk about my poetry and my art. And I've been to the US. Harvard University invited me in 2017 at the India conference. And I've been invited to Canada to speak by the Ministry of uh, by the Ministry of External Affairs and Economic Reform to speak about human rights in the Human Rights World Human Rights Conference and all that. So a lot of things, a lot of places besides India.
Wonderful. Yeah, wonderful, wonderful. And so, do you find any sort of difference when you are with different audiences around when you tell them and are sensitizing them around the topics through your foundation? Do you find any difference, or is it kind of this universal human experience, at least from how they treat you, that people are tolerating and accepting transgender folks and understanding who you are and the journey of folks just like you? Are there any differences, or is it kind of this human experience that people are having?
I think it is a human experience. Wherever I went and talked, I felt love from people. I felt warmth and love from people, and I've never gone across not even one hatred messages. I've spoken in churches too.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been confronted or given a hate message by anyone. Never.
Wow. Wonderful. Good. I'm glad for that. As somebody who's
Thank
trying to
you.
be an advocate, I'm like, good. This is what I want to hear. So I wonder, this is kind of pre-COVID and we're kind of coming out of it. But in the last, I would say 2 years, we kind of just got to say 2020 is not active. But prior to that, like in 2018, 2019, tell me about the foundation. What were you doing? Is it just you? I want our listeners to know about your foundation and the work that you were doing, and then we can talk about the future.
2020 and 2021 are big dots. Big dots. Especially 2021 was horrible dot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in 2018 and 2019, we were doing a lot of shows, a lot of workshops for the transgender community. Especially livelihood has been always a problem for the trans people, because majority of them are school dropouts, live together or sometimes live separately, lonely, and many of them are begging and doing sex work, and many of them are trying to be entrepreneurs as well. So I always try to provide them uh, support. One kind of a support is by providing them with training in art and craft through these free workshops that we offer for transgender community. I mean, from our foundation for the transgender community. And the other one is through Sahodari Foundation, we help the differently abled and the senior transgender people who are unable to work or unable to move. We provide them with support for their medicine and basic amenities that we always do. And besides that, Sahodari Foundation works with the transgender community in a lot of other ways, in so many
Yeah.
other ways, providing them with opportunities, connecting them with people, and particularly mental health is something we focus on. So providing them counseling and guidance in their hard times. Hard times is one thing that we always do. That is with the
Wow.
trans community. But with the
Yeah.
public, we do a
Mm.
lot of work.
Yeah, with the sensitivity. So it looks like there's kind of two parts with the wonderful foundation is one, providing support to the trans community and giving them opportunities, including in the arts, which is amazing. I love hearing that. And then you're doing education and outreach with the community around the world.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, a lot of education
Yeah.
on trans and trans inclusiveness as well as LGBT inclusiveness. Many times I've seen people in India feel uncomfortable when we talk about gay rights, but they feel quite comfortable when we talk about trans rights.
Mm.
So the taboo on gay rights is still prevalent in India. Of course, it will go eventually.
Yeah, yes, that's the hope. I know I was watching some Bollywood movies, and they are focused on lesbian and gay relationships, and it was nice to see
Uh-huh.
them. It was wonderful to see this content. There's one, I'll translate it in English because my Hindi is so bad, but I saw one girl and I felt this way. And I saw that not too long ago, and it's a lesbian love story, and it was really sweet. And, it was set in India, and then they had she was supposed to get married, and then she comes out and they accept her. Luckily they accept her partner, but it was really sweet, and I was happy to see content like that coming out of India.
That's amazing. There's a
Yeah.
lot of other movies also coming in vernacular languages because Bollywood is all about Hindi movies. But
Yes.
actually, in Tamil and in Malayalam and Telugu languages, we make amazing movies, better movies than Bollywood.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And for folks, I was telling you earlier, the episode right before this is about Bollywood, but it's about Indian cinema. And, we have this
Yes,
idea that it's Hindi language. I love that you brought it up because there's so many dialects in India, and
yes, of course.
there's a
Bollywood is not
plethora.
India. Bollywood is a part of India. There
Yes,
is
thank
Hollywood,
you.
Mollywood, Tollywood.
I
Yeah,
love it.
there's
I love it.
Tollywood, Bollywood, and Hollywood, and many of our movies are actually remade in Bollywood. Many of our technicians and directors and cameramen, they are wanted by Bollywood. Yeah.
Wonderful. I love it. This is a great fun
Bol-
fact for me.
Bollywood, Bollywood depends on Tollywood, Hollywood, and Mollywood.
So tell our audiences the difference between those three. Tollywood is
Okay,
from.
Bollywood is Hindi language films,
Mhm.
usually made in Maharashtra, yeah, the state of Maharashtra. That's where it all originates, and mostly in the north of India, Bollywood is. But it's a stereotype that everyone believes India is only Bollywood. No,
Yes.
India is
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah.
There are at least 10 to 15 language films made in India. Because Bollywood is well known, it is India. Everybody thinks it's only Bollywood, but the other big industries other than Bollywood are the Telugu film industry, the Tamil film industry are also equally big. The Telugu film industry, especially we call it Tollywood.
I love it.
Technically, and visually and intellectually, our Bollywood, especially our Tollywood and Collywood, is all very, very, very rich. Especially Telugu movie industry is called Tollywood. Tamil movie industry is called Collywood because in Chennai, Kodambakam is where a lot of studios are there. So we call it
Hmm.
Collywood. And
Very nice.
Malayalam is Bollywood. Malayalam language films are called Mollywood. Malayalam language films are awesome. Like Tamil and Telugu movies, Malayalam movies are more heart touching, realistic, and all that. We, especially all this nonsense in Bollywood, running around trees and women
And singing
wearing
and dancing.
skirts. Yeah, women wearing short skirts and dancing with 100 men in floods. All these superficial things that don't happen in southern films. Of course, it does happen,
Yeah.
but there is minimum exploitation of women in Mollywood and Collywood and Bollywood. I mean, Tollywood. Yeah,
Thank you for the
yeah,
education. And did you
yeah.
say earlier that all these other industries outside of Bollywood also are they more inclusive of storytelling of transgender folks and gay and lesbian folks and everybody in
Of
between?
course, of course. Actually, I would definitely say that we taught them to be inclusive.
Mm.
Our films from South, we taught them to be inclusive. They make films from us. They remake films from these regional languages, Tamil and Telugu movies. They make it in as Bollywood movies with putting up a lot of money and glamour and all that.
Yeah.
Unrealistic but entertaining, of course.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the trees because I kind of poked fun in my podcast. I said, how Bollywood has evolved from the people running around trees, literally, and then they just go into song and dance, and it's just like,
Yeah,
how did
yes.
we
I
get
love
here?
it. I love Bollywood. I'm a big Karan Johar fan. I've seen all of his movies. Kal, Kal Ho Na Ho is my favorite, of course. I love Rani Mukherjee and Shah Rukh Khan roaming around the streets of London. People all don't mind them singing and dancing, and I love that. I love it. It's superficial, but I love it.
I get that's
Streets.
the word superficial. I can't connect. Like when they go into it, I just can't connect. I mean, I do love I love the Doom movies. Those are a lot of fun. I actually really enjoy that series.
Okay.
but the like impromptu singing and dancing that really doesn't move the storyline. I have a hard time with that. But what I really
Okay.
appreciate you saying is letting our listeners know that it's just not Bollywood. That within India, right, there's so much variety, and the art also has a lot of variety because of so many people, the different languages, the so many ethnicities that are what we call India today. I love it.
Totally, yes. Yeah.
Yes.
So, mind you, when we all even talk about food, India is not about samosa or,
No.
tandoori. No. India
No.
is about idli, dosa, and there's a lot of other things too.
Oh yes, I
I mean,
am addicted to a dosas. I love dosas so much. I didn't grow up with them, but I got introduced to them, and I'm like, oh gosh, I
Yeah.
could eat dosas every day. I love it. I
Okay.
love it. We'll have to have
Okay. Okay.
dosas when we connect. We'll have to go get some.
Yeah, of course, the South food, Southern food, people will love Southern food.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, 100%. And I grew up with North Indian food, so it's been an interesting
Yeah.
journey for
Yeah.
me to learn and eat more of the South Indian food, which is absolutely
Yeah,
lovely.
I would advise all the listeners of this podcast to try masala dosa. Please try a masala dosa,
Yes,
and you
it's
would
so
love it.
good. Oh, with the different chutneys. Oh my gosh. Just make sure you have something cool so that you can
Yeah.
offset the heat. So, yes,
Yes.
I love
Totally
it.
yes.
I love it. I love it. So, tell me a little bit more. I know you have this wonderful foundation, but I feel like, because you also are a poet and you're a face, right? People know your face.
Yes.
That it probably
Yes.
helps you this foundation. So I'm interested a little bit more. Let's talk a little bit about your art, and because you do so much art, so I'm interested in learning more about that.
Art and painting is something that came to me very, very naturally. I think as a child, as a teenager, I have gone through a lot of what to say bullying at school. And I went through a lot of internal struggles as well because of my gender dysphoria. When I didn't have friends in my teenage years, early teenage years, when I didn't have friends, and I couldn't express it to my family as well. So pen and paper were only my friends. So I used to take it up and write whatever I want to. That is how it started. I used to visualize the future me
Mm.
talking to you. So I basically drew about how I want to be, and that is how my journey to be a painter started. Also, so I would always write about poetically. I would write about my agony and my pain and all that as little poems. I love languages. I love English. I was so good in English as well as in Tamil. So it came very naturally to me. I also wrote poetry at a very young age in Tamil language, of course, and later I picked up in English language as well. So poetry and art was something that I started doing as a child for healing myself, basically, as a healing therapy. Unknowingly, I started doing it. But it helped me. It helped me heal myself, and also it developed in me as a talent.
Wow, wow. You're just simply amazing. Gosh, you're a poet, you're a painter, you're an actress. What don't you do? You're just
In
absolutely.
fact, next month, my poetry book is going to be published. I've just titled as We Are Not the Others. That is the
Oh.
title of the poetry book.
Mm-hmm.
And half of the poetry is direct translation from English, no, from Tamil to English, and half of the poetry is original English poem. Yeah.
Wow.
So
When is that coming out?
it's coming up next month. Yeah,
Oh
it's
my
coming up next.
gosh. So yeah, mid 2021. Make sure folks you pick that up. That sounds amazing. I will be. Wonderful, wonderful. So what's sort of next? We know now we know about the poetry book, and I know India right now is really suffering in terms of COVID. Luckily, you and your
Yeah.
family are safe, so I'm very thankful for that. As you kind of think about getting out of COVID and you'll be vaccinated, what's the future for your foundation? Where are you thinking, and where are you headed?
I think the future for our foundation is definitely a lot of work. I wanted to create an art village, a knowledge center for a transgender community in at least 4 to 5 acres of land where they can get educated, they can learn so much of knowledge about arts and science and uh, human behavior, and they can learn about history and geography and climate change, and particularly they can learn about our own sciences, yoga, meditation, and all that. I want to educate our young transgender community, give them the opportunity and change their lives for better. This would be a knowledge center where especially the youth will be inducted and given the opportunity and transform them in 2 years as knowledgeable and awesome human beings and to send them as a confident, knowledgeable, compassionate human beings. Yeah, that is what is the future for our foundation.
Wow. Wow. Absolutely amazing. That is so fantastic. And I applaud the work you're doing for our young people, giving them, unfortunately, I would say in the United States and Canada as well, I'll speak for those countries that I'm familiar with. This is what's needed for our trans young people and for, folks that aren't young as well. It's needed for all trans folks to really support them so that they have many other avenues instead of just sex work.
Yeah, totally. Yes.
Yes. Wow. Absolutely amazing. So I asked this question to everybody, if you had to give one piece of advice on how we could be more inclusive in our lives, what would you say?
I think we need to read a lot. We need to actually, before hating someone or judging someone or pointing at someone that they are wrong and their life is wrong and there is something wrong with them, I think first we have to point to ourselves. Are we educated enough? Are we sensitized enough? Are we informed enough to talk about someone or to think about someone or judge someone the way we are doing? Before knowing a transgender person's life or bullying them, you should know, why do they live like this? Why do they dress like this? Why do they actually uh, live as transgender, out and open as transgender person? So that is very, very essential. So hatred comes because of ignorance and lack of knowledge. And hatred can be replaced with love, but only when you open your heart to learn, to get that knowledge. That is the essential part of being a human, that we have always grown as a civilization because of openness to knowledge, openness to learning. And to everyone who listens, open your heart and receive knowledge to break the stereotypes and ignorance, and everything will be okay.
Oh gosh, that was so beautiful. We can replace hatred with love. That is so absolutely wonderful, Kalki. So, my friend, how can people get a hold of you or how can they connect with you online?
Okay, I'm on Instagram on my handle Queen Kalki. So I'm also on Facebook as facebook.com/Kalki Art. You can see the background there. And
yeah, for those that are on video, yes. So facebook.com for Kalki Art, KALKIART, and then Instagram Queen Kalki. Beautiful, beautiful.
Handle is Queen Kalki and facebook.com/Kalki Art. And don't miss to go to our foundation's website. It's sahodari.org, SAHODARI.org. And right now we're running a campaign in a crowdfunding website in India to support the transgender community, because a lot of transgender people are homeless, especially in this COVID. A lot of hundreds and thousands of people are suffering for their livelihood. So I also take this as an opportunity to invite the listener to contribute in the crowdfunding campaign that we have organized. Go to Instagram, my Instagram handle, Queen Kalki, and in the bio, you can find the link to contribute. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you for this opportunity.
I look forward to contributing. Thank you so much, Kalki, for this conversation and everything you're doing. We could talk for hours with everything that you're doing. So I really do appreciate you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashwini. This is an awesome opportunity, and I know how good you are in your podcasting. I've heard a lot about you, all positive and lovely things from Celia. So I'm happy and honored to be interviewed by you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. And you mentioned, our mutual friend Celia, who was on earlier. So thank you, Kalki, so much.